What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Euroset Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, coming back with another draft prospect episode ahead of the draft at the end of the month. This time discussing defensive draft targets. And my lovely co host, who just introduced himself via a bunch of hand waving and I guess pseudo bowing, is Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
Hello. Sorry. I am addicted to looking at myself do those things. So just to feed my ego.
Addicted?
Yeah. It just looks really funny just to do those things. I don't know why. But
Gotcha.
it's also later when
You
we're
you
recording
could
this.
just say you like doing it. I don't know
I
about
like doing it. That's part of it too.
addicted. I would imagine you just in the mirror, just like so. Much
Visual bits on an audio form.
visual bits on an audio form. The Jordan Tresky classic. um, just like last week, where we not ranked, but gave our ideas as to who we'd like to see the Packers draft on the offensive side of the ball coming up in the draft in the first couple of rounds, some targets that to look for. This week we're doing defensive, and nothing really news and notes wise. Kind of a quiet week at 1265 Lombardi Avenue. Now that I think of it, Jordan, the only thing that we missed, I should say missed, that was happened between last week and this week was that the Packers and the mayor of Green Bay getting a little tizzy
Oh yeah,
about
they're getting a little
little
fisticuffs.
fisticuffs. Basically, the
Hey, you
thing,
want to build a third locker room in here?
right? I forget. I think it was Mark Murphy saying that the mayor of Green Bay and the city of Green Bay like weren't coming to the table on renegotiating the lease for Lambeau or whatever the deal was. They're trying to get a deal done to finance some more renovations. I believe the concourses was the next one. Is that right? I believe it was updating the concourse at Lambeau.
Something like that.
Something like that was I'm pretty sure. But
And
they
locker rooms.
but they had to push that off because they're playing hardball with the city of Green Bay, and probably vice versa. Nothing really there. I think there's a you could honestly talk at length about this for a while, just about the dynamic and who's in the wrong, quote unquote, the wrong
Yeah.
about why they couldn't get a deal done quickly and quietly. But I don't think that's worth our time, considering that the Packers are never ever leaving Green Bay. So
Yeah. I think that was pretty much broadcast as much. And it's already a lease that is
goes through
extended
like a
into like
while.
2050s
Yeah,
or 2060s,
it's out a
which I
while.
may not be on this planet anymore by that time. It's that far away.
Well, let's hope so. Um,
Let's hope so.
no, that you're still
Let's
here.
hope not.
Oh, let's okay. Let's hope not. Let's hope you're still here. Is what I was trying to say. That we're still here as well. We're all still here. Life is
Yeah.
good. Life is good. Life is good in Packers land too. But let's hop right into it, Jordan. I guess I want to start with you. Who is obvious? I guess a little different. I should say different. Same as last week. We each picked five players. We might have some overlap, but
Mm.
um, a couple players out of the first, a couple players in the second, and then possibly one in the third. So, like I said, Jordan, let's start with you.
I think we have to talk about probably the most relevant draft prospect to the Packers sphere. I feel like he's the most desired draft pick at where they're at.
Probably.
Cooper DeJean.
Yeah,
I,
he was
I
number one on my board too.
it's hard not to kind of fall into that trap. Not that it's a trap, but you know what I mean? Like he just there's a lot of good things there. A very polished player. I know he finished season with a or his season got was prematurely finished early. Jesus
Prematurely ended.
Christ. Yes, thank you. Um Prematurely ended due to a broken fibula, which is still affected. I think was
He
it
was
this week that he's
he was
finally
just
able to
cleared.
start? Yes.
Yep. So Iowa has
So
their pro day this, I think tomorrow or today. No, I'm sorry. April 8th, so Tuesday.
Okay. So that'll be the first look of Cooper DeJean post broken fibula. And obviously, I mean, if you puts up gaudy numbers, I think everybody will be like, oh, that's really good that his
Yeah.
recovery time and everything like that is back on track and everything like that. But the body work that he put together at Iowa already kind of stands for itself. Like
Mm-hmm.
he just is kind of the Swiss Army knife that I think what makes him so appealing to where the Packers are at right now at this stage of bringing Jeff Hafley and new defensive coordinator, changing up the scheme, kind of rewriting what is possible with this defense is that you can talk yourself into, beyond just the athletic testing or whatever the case may be of like what he puts up individually in those settings, but seeing how he was utilized at Iowa and seeing just the success that he had and why it's propelled him to be, one of the most um, thought of like defensive players in this draft. A draft that, from what reading various folk that do this way better than I do, I think Matt Miller of ESPN had 18 first round grades. Like we get sucked into like, oh, this guy could be at the first round, but based on what the Packers usually select, last year was kind of the aberration. Hopefully, um, is that where they usually select? It's not necessarily guys that are thought of these like blue chip like these are the top 20 or first round graded prospects that we talk about all the time. Usually, you're just taking a big kind of leap, pardon the pun, of what you think is possible with the guy that you think highly of and what he could be in the future. But Cooper DeJean kind of brings all that to the table already with what he's done and what he could be, and I think that's really exciting. And like I said, just kind of pairing that with the reimagining of the Packers defense is really exciting. Like that to me, I think why the defense is so much more exciting to talk about than offensive linemen. Not that to denigrate their position is just there's just so much more possibilities of what the Packers defense could be
Mm-hmm.
after seeing what it had been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I totally agree with you there. The idea that of Jeff Hafley being a defensive backs coach and his previous coaching gigs really does make the uh, the idea of drafting a couple of cornerbacks in this draft, particularly high up as well, really I guess I should say I guess appetizing is the word I'll go with. It's not necessarily an area of need. I think they need some depth there between only having Jair Alexander as like their solidified cornerback one, and then it's kind of a amalgamation of who's going to show up which week between Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine, and Corey Valentine. And so getting Cooper DeJean up at the top of the draft at 25, I think just gives them a for sure number two uh, to go forth and still be young as they rebuild the secondary in this defense. That's not to say I think Carrington Valentine's a bad second option. Like I think I've talked about this in the pod before, but Eric Stokes to me is kind of just like, is he around? Can he still play? What's
He's
his
kind of a
deal?
black box, honestly. Like
Yeah,
I could see him actually playing for them and starting and getting a lot of snaps.
yep,
I could also see them like by the end of training camp when they have to make cuts, and if he's not there, they'd be like, "Yeah, we're done."
yep, yeah. Totally agree. It's just his injury history has been problematic for them, and has given them depth issues. So we'll see how that goes going forward in the training camp and throughout the rest of the offseason when they have to decide on his fifth year option come May. But for now, Cooper DeJean, very good prospect. Very good prospect. You had talked about how he's kind of like a five-tool player when it comes to steal a baseball term and five-tool player, but can really play anywhere in the secondary. He was primarily an outside corner at Iowa. He had in his last 2 years he had 553 snaps on the outside corner, 630. 553 in 2022, 630 in 2023. He did play some slot corner in 2022, 140 snaps. Um, but he has played box. He has played in the slot. He has played on the D line somewhat. Doesn't play a whole lot of deep in like safety looks, but I know that there were some draft analysts that said he definitely could. And for what it's worth, PFF has him as the second best defensive prospect on their big board right now. I think they have him on their big board as like 9 right now, if I'm not mistaken. So
Wow.
it's definitely a PFF's really high on him, like really really high on him, just because I think his athleticism that he's shown at Iowa and his just overall ability to stick with players is quite good. Like I think there's a real chance he becomes a pretty big player and a pretty big star in the NFL. Really instinctual, really great tackler in the film that I was watching of him. He doesn't really miss a whole lot of tackles, doesn't get shook by a whole lot of receivers. The only ones he does have trouble with are the sort of twitchy receivers that can make multiple moves in like 2 seconds and then get free that way. And I think that just has probably something you need to work on because you're not going to really find a whole lot of those types of receivers in college. So, for what that's worth, he's fast. He can shadow receivers. What came through is that, and I think definitely showed in the film, is he doesn't play a lot of press. Less than 25% of his snaps were in press man coverage, which, if you're a common listener of this podcast, you know I love because I hate giving good receivers free reign and free release on their routes. Um, but against Marvin Harrison Jr., he was giving him 5-6 yards of cushion and turning his hips before the ball was even snapped and like getting ready to backpedal. And so I think that's something that might need to be coached a little bit in the NFL because if you're starting to run backwards before the play even starts, good quarterbacks are going to see that and just throw a bubble screen for 6 yards, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
um, but overall, like it's just he's a really good player, and I think the build is there for Cooper DeJean to be for sure a starting cornerback in the NFL day one. It's just a matter of where does he go in the draft because there are teams high up in the draft that definitely could use a cornerback. I know when I run mock drafts on PFF, sometimes he goes to the Chargers at 5, sometimes he goes to the Jets at 10, sometimes he goes to um, Philadelphia at 22, sometimes he goes to the Vikings at 23 or Dallas at 24. Like it's kind of all over as to where he goes in the draft, and he very well might not even make it close to the Packers at 25. Right now, Tankathon has him being drafted by the Packers at 25, which Tankathon, like we mentioned before, is an aggregate of a bunch of um, a bunch of mock drafts. So take that into account there. But yeah, Cooper DeJean was also my top pick, and I think one of my I think the person I'd like them to draft between both sides is kind of where I'm at with that.
Mm. Are we locking that in now, or are we gonna lock that in later?
No, I think I've been on Cooper DeJean for the better part of the offseason. Just like I think he's a really unique player, and it's hard to hit on cornerback. I should say it's hard. They just did it in the 7th round last year, but I'm very nervous about the secondary and their ability to stay healthy and have depth. Like, there's a lot
Yeah,
of good cornerbacks in this first round. Like, maybe go back to
it's
the
a
mock
very
draft, but like I think it's Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. He's the top cornerback in the draft, along with Terry and Arnold out of Alabama. Um, then you go down to Kool Aid McKinstry out of Alabama, who is around the same area that that Cooper DeJean is in, and obviously Cooper DeJean. There's just a lot of good cornerbacks in this draft. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri, Camry, I think it's Lassiter out of Georgia, Mike Sandstrill out of Michigan. Like these are all guys that are going in the top 40, or at least mocked
yeah.
through the top 40. And so I'm not really sure how they're gonna go if they think they can find value later in the draft for cornerback, but it's a good draft for corner, and I'd like to see them at least get one early.
Um, bring up that same article that I brought up last week from ESPN, Scouts Incorporated, just their top 100, kind of, breaking it down by position. 12 cornerbacks in Scouts Incorporated's top 100, four with first round grades: Quinyon Mitchell, Terry and Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, and Ennis Rakestraw.
I
Actually, that's
have.
five.
I'll say that's five. Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for the first like. Yeah, I could the same guy to start with. I think it's definitely. I think he'll definitely make an impact wherever he is, and
Yes.
he's one of those players where if he's there
He's
at
very
20.
malleable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That I think that's the biggest thing that I have look reading and watching stuff about him
Yep.
is that there's just a lot of versatility that he brings.
Yeah.
And if even if he's not like the most physical corner, pressing up or whatever, like there are things that obviously he has to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some talk of whether he's actually a true corner or do you play him in space as a safety or
Yeah. The
like I just think it's just ultimately gonna work. That's what it is.
right. PFF has like their draft analysis. They have like a bottom line, which is like two sentences wrapping up the player, and it says the talk of DeJean playing outside corner or safety or slot at the next level is not due to lack of a home position. It's because he could truly be an impact player anywhere. His footwork, ball skills, and explosive athleticism make him an impactful outside cornerback, one with all pro potential. Like he's just good. Like you watch on the tape and he explodes to the ball. He's a good tackler, makes plays. Like I said, he's 6'1", 207. He just turned 21, so he's still pretty young too. So yeah, I'm just a big fan of him. I think he'll have a pretty good career.
Now we know the Packers have. I mean, last year they took an Iowa player. There's been a lot of successful Iowa picks,
They
and the
like picking.
Packers.
I mean, yeah, they like picking players out of Iowa. Like Iowa for all its uh all its blemishes as a college program and their success as a college program produces a lot of NFL players.
It does.
They did whiff on the
And
last quarterback they took from Iowa though, Josh Jackson.
oh, Josh Jack, yeah, yeah, and that was a high pick too.
Yep,
Um, God, he should
he was bad.
have. I know he was bad, but he should have been good.
He should have been good.
Good
Yeah,
at Iowa. Um, the other thing, if I remember seeing this correctly, Packers have taken ever since taking Jordan Love, they have taken um players represented by his agency the last 3 years.
I cannot
Between
confirm or deny. I have no idea.
Van Ness. I'm not. I mean, this is more like an NBA thing because it's like, oh, look who's represented. Like, because
Yeah,
that is. But just worth
notably
noting that Cooper
Cooper
DeJean is
DeJean.
also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm just saying he's just represented by the same sports agency.
Yeah, athletes first, I believe, was
Athletes first.
the agency.
Mine will be called athletes second
God
because the
damn it, Jordan.
first was already taken.
Clearly. Alrighty. Should we move on to our next player? Anything else on Cooper?
Do we have anybody else in this kind of the first round 25 pick range?
Yeah, I have another guy
Okay.
who I also wouldn't mind if they picked, um, as well. So my second option is everyone's been calling him Johnny Newton out of Illinois, but I think it's Jerzan. It's Jer apostrophe Zhan. Like I think it's Jerzan, and I think
Yes.
this might be a Kingsley JJ situation where a little bit
What
of
does he
what does he
prefer to
prefer?
be called?
Yeah, and so um, 2023 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. This man is an absolute beast. He's a monster inside. He is PFF's top rated prospect. Um, and I'm sorry, top rated defensive prospect this year, at least on their big board. And golly, he's quite good. Takes a lot of his snaps either over the tackle or in the B gap. And did I mention he's an interior defensive lineman? I think I did.
Yep.
But okay. Um, I don't want to like. This isn't meant to be taken literally. You know the GIF where the kid from Toy Story drops Woody, says
Mm.
I don't want to play with you anymore. That's
Oh
that's me
no. And
figured
Devontae Wyatt.
figuratively with Devontae Wyatt. Um, I mean, I mean Johnny Newton is just like you watch him on tape and he's crazy fast and and pretty darn strong too. He had his like best year in 2022. He was ranked by PFF. His overall grade was a 91.5 in 13 games, which is absolutely insane. Uh, 723 defensive snaps, 423 pass rushes, almost 300 run defense snaps. And here's where like I want to make like the Devontae Wyatt, Johnny Newton kind of like not comparison, but the idea. In 2022, Johnny Newton had 36 hurries, 19 hits, and 4 sacks. Moving on to this year, 2023, he had 28 hurries, 7 hits, and 8 sacks.
Mm.
He started converting a few of those hurries or a few of those hits into actual sacks. Like he doubled his production, which is very good in my opinion. He didn't have as many hurries and not as many hits overall, and like sacks and hits combined is 15 and 23, and in 2022 it was 23. So he didn't have as many like pressures per se, but it's nice seeing him get home more. Like it's just better, in my opinion, that he's at least getting home and not leaving more to be desired. And golly, like he can manhandle some dudes. Um, he isn't huge. I mean, trying to find his he's 6'2", 295, which is a little bit light for an interior defensive lineman. You think of guys like Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt, they're pretty large men, and so that does allow him to sort of get a little bit washed out when it comes to getting double teamed or bull rushed by offensive linemen on a run play.
Mm.
And so it's not something he can't like get over, but I do think that getting into an NFL strength and conditioning regimen would help him a lot. Like he would just put on more muscle and just get bigger.
Yeah.
The one thing that came across to me when watching his tape, I forgot to do this last episode, so I'll do it now because I don't want to forget again. Shout out 2 Minute Drill on YouTube. Just a guy that
Yes,
posts,
those are great.
yep, post 2 minutes of a player's highlights and what they do well and everything. And it's very good to consume bits and then kind of branch out from there. So shout out 2 Minute Drill. Go check out his stuff on YouTube for whichever player you're curious about. Like I think I going back to last year, I used that channel as well, and I think there was only like one time I couldn't find a video that of a prospect in like the first 3 rounds I was trying to see. So he's definitely got a lot of stuff over there. But anyways, um, when I was watching his highlights, like he just gets off the ball so fast. It's like he's shot out of a cannon when he gets off the line. It's which is really good for a guy trying to stop the run, and
Yeah.
that's like what we need, right? Is we need a good run stopper. Um, Run stop rate is above average at 7.4% according to PFF, and then his run defense grade is good. He's got good grades like all around compared to the rest of his peers at his position. And so there's I don't want to say like factions of fans who want like Graham Barton drafted or Cooper DeJean or Johnny Newton, but I have seen a lot of Johnny Newton love on the timeline, and I think he'd be a great pick. I just my hesitancy, I should say hesitancy. My preference is that they just drafted like pass rusher and like lineman and Lucas Van Ness last year, and I'm trying to think the last time they took a cornerback was Eric Stokes, who's coming off of his injuries and up for his 5th year this May. It's the idea of, do you want a really stupid good defensive line, or do you want to shore up the 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 part of your defense that's giving you problems in your secondary?
Yeah.
Because right now it's Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, and Colby Wooden are your main interior defensive linemen.
And
I'm forgetting somebody. I know
Slayton.
Slayton. So 4 or 5 guys
Yeah.
who definitely deserve playing time. Carl Brooks, really good last year, right? Remember we talked about the redraft and he was 20 and you got very
I wasn't
mad?
gonna bring it up.
I know, but I did. Colby
You didn't
Wooden,
even write it. I was more insulted by that writer's opinion.
right. Colby Wooden, like, also showed good
Yeah.
stuff last year. I just don't.
Basically, those 5 guys are
are good. Like
those five guys might play all the snaps. I like that's
that.
where they for if we're talking about strictly next year,
Yep.
they're kind of
Which you
set.
which you
But
shouldn't
Slade,
do, but yeah.
yeah, Slade's gonna be a free agent. There's always, I mean, we just saw with Aaron Jones this year.
Yep.
The moment you keep restructuring contracts and stuff like that, Ken Clark might be like, yeah, I don't really want to take a pay cut anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that possibility is open,
Yeah.
even if you think it's not.
Yep.
Um,
Which is notable because like Johnny Newton doesn't like profile as a nose tackle like Kenny Clark does, which is like important to note. Like they,
Wyatt would be fourth year the following year, right? This is gonna be his third season.
yeah, it will be. Wow.
I know it's crazy. Um, so right now it's not an immediate need, but I also
But it
wouldn't be
definitely, yeah,
surprised. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Again, another guy that I don't know if he makes it to 25. Right now, he
Oh
is.
yeah,
Right
that's
now,
the other
he's getting
thing.
drafted 27th, which is like crazy because there's so many. Excuse me, so many guys. Again, that's Tankathon's,
Yeah,
Tankathon's mock, but it's a lot of edge rushers towards the top for defense. Like Dallas Turner is eighth, to the Falcons according to Tankathon. Jared Verse, um, Latu, the other
the UCLA guy.
UCLA. Yep.
There's like a glut, like it, and the Robinson. There's a Darius Robinson and then Chop Robinson, which is oh god, my
Yep.
favorite draft name.
Chopper Robinson
Chop Robinson. Are you kidding me?
currently mocked to the Lions, which is unfortunate.
That is unfortunate.
But yeah, either which way, it's just like, do you want to plan for the future and draft Johnny Newton if he gets there? Do you want to shore up your secondary with Cooper DeJean? It's just tough. So, but yeah, that was my second player was Jazon Newton. Who is your second player off the board?
So I look more towards second round targets here.
Okay.
I was split because, for one, cornerback is a very huge need. We obviously talked about it with the depth is pretty shallow. Eric Stokes just being this kind of mystery box of just being a mystery box. Jair Alexander is obviously the top dog, but you also want to see him kind of find what he had clearly not brought to the table last year
Yep.
or even the year before that too. Um, so there's just a lot of kind of volatility in that department. On the other hand, Packers, as good as they feel about their linebacker room with between the presence of Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie, who has steadily improved, but I would not say is like set as this kind of yeah, you're gonna get more snaps as a playing off of Quay Walker, filling in, stepping up in light of Devondre Campbell leaving. Their linebacker room is pretty thin. Beyond that, it's Eric Wilson and then Christian Welch, mostly special teamers guys. So linebacker has been kind of a huge point of interest for me into this draft because of just kind of the blank slate that they had and kind of think not to just there's a lot of kind of talk about Devondre Campbell and the way that he left and what he said and everything like that, which I actually don't have a problem with. I don't. I think everything that he said is valid. I agree with him on pretty much everything. It's a, we only see a very small glimpse of what life is like playing in Green Bay like that. I think he was very forthcoming and honest in a very real way. I think also he's older and he was clearly whether it was due to injuries or just his age, he wasn't the same athlete. It wasn't the same player that he was obviously to start his time in Green Bay. So I think the time to kind of reshuffle the deck here and add a nice, well-rounded linebacker can be had at this point in the draft. It's not a top heavy, or I shouldn't say it's not a prestigious linebacker class. A lot of just to go from that article again. Um, from Scouts Inc. I believe it is one of the lowest rated position classes in this draft. Five top 100 linebackers per Scouts Inc. Zero with first round grades. So it's not like these guys could. They have flaws. They're not perfect. They're a lot of them are undersized, everything like that. But the guy that has kind of say all that. Long story short, guy that has really I've keyed in on is Junior Colson from Michigan, linebacker. Um, I like the explosiveness that he brings. I like the kind of tenaciousness. Like, I think he and Quay Walker would be a very interesting match in the sense that Colson can kind of do a little bit of everything, but there is shared DNA in that they explode to the ball. They don't really. Colson's probably more polished as a tackler. I believe it was reading Danny Kelly's big board from the Ringer. He has in 2023 he had just notched five missed tackles, so a 4.7% missed tackle rate per PFF. So basically a per PFF stat in his
Love that.
uh, bio. Yeah. So a guy that he's not going to miss. He's going
Nope.
to play very sound, disciplined stuff that, frankly, I think the Packers just need more of that. Like
Yeah.
I like
I
Isaiah
totally
McDuffie a
agree.
lot.
Like, strong agree with that last sentence.
Like that is the thing that's going to really change the dynamic of this team. And I think we were talking about it as the Packers are making their unlikely playoff run. It's like, you're thinking to the teams that were in the final four, they all had really good linebackers. And they had it's it's a position I understand why it's not valued the same way as it used to be just because guys get hurt, they lose their foot speed. I mean, Devondre Campbell is probably the perfect example of like you may not want to pay a lot of money to him because it's not necessarily going to last over the course of that contract or whatever. Um, on the other hand, it's a very incredibly important position in terms of if you have a great defense, if you go deep in the playoffs, it's largely because you have a really good linebacker core. And I think Drew Coles is not the only guy that catches my attention in this regard, but I think he kind of brings the most athletic, physical, just his overall makeup of what he brings to the table just kind of interests me the most, I would say.
Yeah, I think going back to our discussion we had prior to the 49ers game talking about Fred Warner, you nailed it on the head that it's a really good linebacker like that is just a game changer. A linebacker that can play in coverage, that can make tackles and stop the run, like it really just is important. I think even though it is a diminished role in today's NFL, like linebackers have gotten
Mm.
smaller over the years and gotten faster as opposed to hitting harder. And so I don't know. I think I don't like mind Junior Colston. I think he'd be a fine player. Has obviously championship experience from Michigan. Um, had had over 100 total tackles, whether he assisted or just solo tackled last year. Um, and so yeah, like I'm all about it.
Yep.
I'll stick with the same position for my first pick in the second round. I'm going with Andrew Snyder's own Peyton Wilson, the
Mm.
2023 ACC Defensive Player of the Year, the 2023 I think it's Bednarik winner. Is how you pronounce it? Which is I think is
Chuck Bednarik.
the top linebacker in the nation for college football. Um, one of the top linebackers in an albeit weak linebacker class. Um, I think Peyton Wilson, Junior Colson are two of the top linebackers, and both of them don't have grades or like first round grades. They're definitely second round players, or at least that's where they're mocked or they're expected to go, kind of thing. Very athletic, has a 9.88 RAS with elite agility and speed. He ran a 4.43 at the combine. Um,
Okay.
yep, 6'3", 233, and you have to think 4.43 comes after, which is why he's being drafted here in the second round. two ACL tears, and a pretty significant shoulder injury. That is the major rub with Peyton Wilson, is that he has a pretty extensive injury history, and like substantial ones. Two ACL tears and a shoulder is not something you just turn your nose at.
Are the ACL tears on the same knee or both? Or I
I
can
Yeah,
you
I
keep going. I'll look that
I
up.
tried to find that and I couldn't find it easily. However, through his pre-draft interviews at the combine, he had this to say, quote, throughout my career, early in my career, I did have a lot of injuries, but these last 2 years, I've stayed really healthy. I've put on some extra weight. I've really honed in on nutrition and maintenance programs to keep me healthy. I think what I have going on is going to keep me playing a long time in the NFL, and I'm not scared of injuries. At the end of the day, they're inevitable. I'm going to play every single play like it's my last. Whatever happens, happens. End quote.
He tore the same ACL
Right. So not ideal.
twice.
Not ideal for sure. But he is right when he talks about how he stayed healthy the last 2 years. I believe if I was as I pull up the his PFF page, he played in 11 games last year and in 12 games this year. His 2021 was the year he hurt his shoulder or had a shoulder injury, and he only played 2 games that year. But um, 92 total or 92 solo tackles in 2023, 31 assists assisted. Another guy that can play all over the front seven. He had 490 snaps in the box in 2023, along with 173 on the D line, and even was outplaying slot corner a few times this year. And what is honestly really intriguing about him for me is that he just can play coverage. He can play in coverage. He has a 90.4 coverage grade this year from PFF. He had 3 interceptions and 3 forced completions. Um, while in coverage, he was targeted 37 times and led up 24 catches, and had ranked first in the nation in PFF's coverage stops, which is a good play for the defense in coverage at with 26 this year.
Ooh.
And so, like, if he can stay healthy, which is the one of the biggest ifs for Peyton Wilson, if he can stay healthy, I think this is an absolute home run of a pick for the Packers. I think at any point in the draft they can get him. Like if they really want to take a big swing and take him in the first, I think that'd be a very very risky play to do. Again, given his injury history, but holy moly, like I think Peyton Wilson has all the tools to be a pretty darn good linebacker linebacker in the NFL. Has a whole lot of strengths. He's fast. He has a high football IQ, and just a really violent tackler for what that's worth. Um, his player comparison is Jack Campbell. He's like 74% of Jack Campbell, is what this NFL Draft Buzz site kind of compared him to. Jack Campbell had a really great season for the Lions last year, and
And a
so
pick that people thought they reached on
they reached on
at the
right.
time.
Um, that same website, the NFL Draft Buzz, has his weaknesses listed. He has a bunch of. Let me see. He has 11 strength bullets. He has 5 weakness bullets. One of them is his injury history. The other ones are leaner frame and below average length, potentially affecting his ability to shed blocks. He's over aggressive, that can lead to missed tackles and overrunning plays. That can be coached out quite easily. Um, Needs to further develop strength to handle the physicality of line of scrimmage. Again, that's just what happens in the NFL. You get stronger with the pro regimen. And as an older rookie, his window for peak performance might be narrower than other prospects. So he's old, which means he's also experienced, which isn't a bad thing. He needs to get stronger, which he can do in the NFL, and he needs to not be so aggressive in pursuit and miss tackles. The only thing that's really affecting his weaknesses is injuries, which he hasn't been in 2 years, and just his general build, something he can't control. The rest of it can be coached out, and
Yeah.
something I think he will be able to work on as an NFL player. And so I think he's going to be pretty darn good. He might be my Darnell Washington of this year. Where like he's probably going to be there at for the Packers at 41, and I'm going to be screaming at my monitor begging them to take him, and I don't know if they do or not. He fits all the measurables for the Packers. He has, like I said, a really great RAS score, which is something the Packers care about quite a lot, particularly Brian Gutekunst. But we'll see. But yeah, Peyton Wilson is the linebacker I'd like them to draft in the draft.
It's hard not to get sucked into it because one, the athletic testing is very highly thought of, clearly. Two, like he's a playmaker. Like there's not a lot of faults. I know what you mean. Like the one of his weaknesses is his build and stuff like that. But like there are ways to overcome that. But in terms of just his ability to, whether it's to play against the run or drop back and defend, chase after wide receiver targets or tight end targets, guy's really disruptive. And I think that to me is like the biggest theme of like any pick that I would like to see for the defense, especially after this last season where, you know, this again, it's a very different scheme of how they're going to play and just the overall like, you know, just setup. The Packers were just so vanilla. Like they did not, they played it, they defended in the terms of what they didn't want to give up rather than like, this is what we want to take away. You know what I mean? Like that is, there's a passivity to that and there's an activity to what I hope that they can kind of generate with their defense. So a guy like Payton Wilson, when he's on the field, and granted, like he had to overcome a lot of those ACL tears early, whether it was in high school or like as he was going into college. He's a little bit removed from that, even as concerning that it is. And obviously, he missed time with a shoulder injury during one of his years that cannot be ignored either. The red flags are there. It's very obvious. If he falls in the draft, we know why. It's that teams don't like what comes back on his medical history and all that stuff. But in terms of again body of work that he has brought to the table, guy's really really good.
Really good.
And so like it's kind of I think for me, if we kind of like take a bird's eye view of it, are you gonna say I'm gonna sign up for 5 years of really good football from this guy, and like okay, I'll take the best of that, or would you rather go the more longevity route of 7 to 8 years of this guy's a solid starter, but there's not there it's not necessarily peaks and valleys, but like it's just kind of like the steady quality of it. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I think I would probably go the former. I would take if that guy can give me
5, 6
five
good
years,
years.
basically his first contract,
Yep.
and he's on the field mostly healthy, whatever number of snaps that you have to be like. That's a during his time in Green Bay. That's a really productive time.
Yeah.
I would
I don't
easily
want
sign
to.
up for that if he's doing what Payton Wilson was doing at NC State.
Yeah. I don't want to invoke his name as if they're equal, but like the idea of like Luke Kuechly played like 7 years of all pro level football, then retired.
As I was looking up, uh, Payton Wilson's like which needed each pair. Luke Kuechly had said that he looked reminded him a lot of himself. So that's an interesting comp that you brought up.
Okay, then I'm just
But that is a perfect of that guy's career got cut short. But when he was on the field, he was a monster. I mean,
amazing.
the
Yeah.
Panthers went to a Super Bowl with him,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah,
He's
that was
one of
around
the
that same time.
smartest like linebackers ever. Just like
Yep.
an incredible linebacker. So yeah, that's where I sit with my first second round pick. So back to you, Jordan. Where are we at?
Disruptive is the name of the game. We're going Tyler Nubin, safety from Minnesota.
Really?
Um, yes, yes.
Okay.
I don't know. There's been difference of opinion of top safety, depending on the draft expert. I know Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com is quite smitten, if I could use that word. He's
Mostly
quite
because
smitten.
go ahead.
Yes, he's quite smitten with um Tyler Nubin. I've seen a lot of like maybe Tankathon would probably be the better way of judging this, but I feel like Tyler Nubin, if he's not the top safety in this class, he is either second or third. Like he's highly thought of in that.
Off of Tankathon, yeah, he's his first safety off the board, but
Okay, thank you very much.
notably not a strong safety draft whatsoever.
No, similar to how we talked about last year, frankly.
Yeah, that there's one guy, and after that one guy, there's not a whole lot to be desired.
Yep.
Even like Brian
Scouts
Branch even
Incorporated.
didn't go to the second either.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about Brand Branch in a second.
Yes, we are.
Scouts Incorporated has 0 first round grades for safeties in this class, 8 in the top 100. Um, as far as Tyler Newman goes, very disruptive, as I mentioned. 5 interceptions, 4 pass breakups last year for Minnesota, 12 interceptions in the last 3 seasons. Their PFF ranked him in terms of this draft class. He was the third best ranked safety in terms of coverage grade. If that means anybody to anybody out there. Um, he had an opposing or opponent 36.9 passer rating on targets thrown his way during the season. There's just a lot to like about a safety that can do the things that he does. And obviously, Packers got Xavier McKinney, best safety in the free agent class. Say if they can get the best safety in the draft class, can make an instant impact and kind of play off of McKinney and really just uh, kind of be that security blanket that the Packers need in the secondary because they're not going to address all their cornerback needs. I mean, as big of a hole as corner and second safety is for them currently, there's other needs that need to get addressed. Maybe the balance of where they target which position and how many they kind of double dip because I think that's going to happen. You know, kind of would tilt more towards linemen, in my opinion, over maybe linebacker, safety, corner, whatever else. But a guy like Newbin just intrigues in the sense that what he brings, he plays really big. Obviously, I just like a safety that can make plays the way he did, especially, we don't have to look that far to see just what it's like to have safeties that can do things, but just are very limited, like Jonathan Owens or even Rudy Ford before he
Yeah,
got benched. Yeah, I mean
yeah,
those guys plugged in just fine. We didn't expect them to be world beaters or anything like that, but they're placeholders.
right.
So, yeah.
Um, Notably, he is pretty big, as you mentioned, 6'2", 210. Um, Definitely like a tall cornerback. Had 20 targets this year and only 6 receptions. He allowed 2 touchdowns and had 5 interceptions. Pretty darn good. Um, Mostly played deep. What did play some box and played a couple 84 snaps in the slot. Uh, 6 missed tackles, which is just fine over the course of 12 games. Had a pretty good grade from PFF as well. Um, Notably, not the best RAS score. That's redundant.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best RAS, which is the athletic score. A 4.59 40. Um, Graded out poorly for agility grades and graded out poorly for his explosion grades, which is your vertical and your broad jump. I'm he There's nobody here that is recognizable for like player comps, but a 3.53 RAS, which is not ideal for sure when it comes to talking about like guys the Packers draft. Like I guess that doesn't worry you at all that he doesn't seem like he's the most athletic player.
Sorry, I just got sidetracked. I just saw
You're good.
something.
It doesn't worry you at all that he doesn't seem like he's the most athletic player.
It does because one, you just want reactionary speed. You want
Mm-hmm.
guys that can explode to the ball. The way we don't know the exact way that the Packers are going to play defensively, but you just knowing how that again. I don't want to keep using this excuse, but like we saw just how guys didn't read the right way. If he doesn't necessarily have the foot speed or athletic abilities, can he cover that up with, oh, I can diagnose this play, I know what route to cover, kind of that, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not a perfect, it's not ideal, but I like that somewhat to overcome what he may be lacking.
For what it's worth, PFF has his pros that has a quick and controlled back pedal. Um, sorry, his ability to flip his hips and run is a good one to have if you're not having the fastest 40 time kind of thing. And he's a good blitzer, even from his deep alignments. So he probably could come over some of that. I just don't think he's not to say that he might not be a good player, but we've seen the Packers take players with high RESs in the past pretty prominently.
Yeah.
I think this takes him off their board, whether that's justified or not. Because I think he does grit out well, and I think he could play well, but I'm not sure the Packers take a swing on him where he's available at 20, or I'm sorry, at 41.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is the system by which all systems are. Sorry, I have something in my eye.
I can tell.
Is the is the system in which all systems are used to kind of accurately, you know, how the Packers view their
Mm-hmm.
prestigious picks.
Right.
But I think Brian Branch is a very interesting example of
Yeah.
a guy that did not have a good RAS score that made an immediate impact for that Lions defense. And I don't know if he was the best defender on that team when all was said and done. I think Aiden Hutchinson obviously wore that crown,
Yeah.
but they went to the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
Does Brian Branch help the Packers get to the NFC Championship game?
I don't think so. They probably should use that pick on a linebacker or a kicker.
I don't know. I didn't see Brian Branch go with that touchdown that Darnell Savage did.
Yeah, I
Good
guess.
luck. Good luck to that, Jags fans. I
But
don't know. Not to
I
not to
mean,
just play
for
that
what?
game because it's.
Well, yeah, because the other side of that coin is he had a pick six against the Cowboys.
I know.
Um,
Um,
but like comparing Brian Branch, like Brian Branch last year had a 4.58 40 compared to the 4.59 that Tyler Newman ran this year. Brian Branch is 2 inches shorter and 15 pounds lighter, and the only difference between their explosion, I think they had the same broad jumps length to like half of an inch, but Brian Branch can jump 3 inches higher at the combine last year. So a similar like build of player ish. That 2 inches, I think that 2 inches of height doesn't make up for the 3 inches of jumping essentially because I mean I guess it kind of does. It's the same the thing. You're just trying to get your hands up higher in the air, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see where that comes from because obviously like with PFF scores with any sort of analytic score, it's not the end all be all, right? For the
yeah,
Packers, it kind of is, but for how well the player will actually perform, it definitely isn't because, like you said, Brian Branch was a very impactful player for the Lions last year. So
yeah.
we'll see, we'll see.
I think also. Sorry, not
No, go
to
ahead.
cut
No, go
across
ahead.
here. Whether it's Newman or whatever they do with safety, even if that's someone that they even take a player that they or a position that they take in the draft, they already got their big chess piece with safety with McKinney.
Yeah,
I'll be very interested to see how they earn the investment level in the second safety and how they want to do that
yeah,
because they could easily be like, well, we got our premier guy, we got our guy that's going to be all over the field, that's going to be taking away targets that could just eliminating possibilities for
right.
the offense.
That's also kind of like why I liked Cooper DeJean as the pick because his ability to play across the secondary takes away their need to have to draft a safety.
Yeah,
Like maybe safety is not his most natural position, but he can play it. It seems that he has the tools to be able to play it. So you have McKinney, DeJean, I guess sets where they're both safeties are you put McKinney as the one high safety and then put DeJean outside, or McKinney as the deep safety and then him DeJean in the slot and then Carrington Valentine on the outside with Jair. Like I think there's different ways you can do that with just a better player. Was kind of my idea of wanting to draft Cooper in the first versus, like you said, taking Newman in the second area, whether it's 41 or 58, and not wasting a pick on Newman, but like having to draft the safety in a season or in a draft where the safety isn't the best class again.
Yeah. Do they think that they could find someone deeper in the draft? Is kind of,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they
exactly.
took Anthony Johnson Jr. in the seventh round.
Yeah, they have so
Even
many picks this year that they could take a couple swings if they really wanted to.
yeah, Reverend Cooper DeJean,
Don't know what that was.
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond. Okay. Um, anything else on Tyler Newman?
No,
All right,
back to you, Nooms.
back to me. My next second round pick that I think the Packers should take a look at is Edgerrin Cooper, another one of the linebackers heavily mocked to the Packers. Uh, he played consistently over the last 3 years. I'm trying to pull up his page now, so please give me a moment. But uh, I'll pull up his RS score in the meantime. Still pretty good. 9.12. Ran a 4.51 combine. 6'2", 230, which is a little light for a I cannot speak anymore. My word, for a linebacker. It had some like just fine explosion scores with his vertical and his broad jump, but 11 games in 21, 11 games in 22, and 12 games in 23. His best graded year was definitely this year. The he does miss a lot of tackles. He had 11 missed tackles the last 2 years and 10 and 21 out of Texas A&M. Plays a lot of the box like any linebacker would. Played a little bit in the slot, but had semi good coverage grades, and I should say semi good. Actually, pretty good at 85.5. But I think the biggest thing for Edgerrin Cooper is that he is a little small, as well as just doesn't seem to be the best tackler. The if he doesn't seem to attack like the holes in the running game, and if he does, he gets stuck a lot. Like again, watching his film, it just seemed like he wasn't the most. There was a stark difference between Jerzon Newton hitting a hole and Edgerrin Cooper hitting a hole. Like it was night and day as to sort of how they were addressing the run game and how they were getting home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Definitely a reactor versus an anticipator when it comes to like reading plays. Does a lot of reacting versus actually reading a play and being able to get there before the offensive player does get there. I think like we talked about with Peyton Wilson, that linebacker just is in need, and I don't think you shy away from Edgerrin Cooper just because he isn't like grading out the best. I think like, but I still think like Junior Colson and Peyton Wilson are better prospects than he is. Um, he still has good rushing grades, despite not having the I guess the violence and the I want to say not violence, not being the run defender I'd like him to be. Just on film is what I was trying to say,
Oh yeah.
and not attacking holes with the ferociousness with all the adjectives I'm throwing out here that I want to, but just for being a linebacker in Green Bay as of looking back historically last 10 years. We need linebackers that are good run defenders and good coverage backers. He seemingly is that. I just get worried about the missed tackles if he is missing tackles that often.
Yeah.
I think it's harder, which is, again, it's stupid as a thing that just is a thing. I think you either can tackle or you can't, right? You've been playing football for so long once you're ready to get drafted. The guys that are surefire tacklers just are. And the guys who aren't generally still struggle with it. Because if you could teach bad tacklers to be good tacklers, like I should say easily, then they just would do that, right?
Yeah.
But like seriously, how many
Yeah.
times have I talked about how like the Ravens employ a bunch of really good tacklers on their defense. The Packers don't.
Yeah.
Like, and if it was as simple as saying, "Hey, wrap up and do this," they do that. But I think it's more of a instinctual and just something that you learned how to do well at an early age when it comes to something like that. And then your athleticism might have brought you farther if you're not a good tackler in order to make up for bad form tackling or stuff like that, where better players, more elusive players can break out tackles and cause a miss. So I out of Texas A&M, like I had said, I if he's there, I wouldn't mind. Like at 58, I wouldn't mind them picking him. I could see him dropping a little bit, kind of similar to how some of the other players like drafted, and like how Brian Branch drafted. Only how Brian Branch was drafted in the mid second, I think, last year to the Lions, or early second, I
That
forget
sounds
which.
right.
But he was supposed to go like at 14 to the Packers or 13 to the Packers. Like that was where we kind of had mocked him, and others had mocked him as well. So if Cooper falls to 58, I wouldn't mind them picking him there, or even at 88 or 91 in the third. I don't think he falls that far, but I think at that point it's a better deal than picking him at 41.
I would agree with that. I think he is he's a lot different than Colson and certainly Wilson. There's like an explosiveness, but there's also kind of like I think your point of just the tackling and just kind of like ferocity, but like untamed ferocity of just like you're kind of freewheeling. Yeah, I mean, are you playing with sound mind and like kind of that? It was just very apparent watching him and just kind of the way that he does things. And I think he's gonna be good. I think for me, there was just a lot of the things that he brought to the table that I thought that Quay Walker can do and already does seemingly well enough. Like if Quay Walker is unleashed as a pass rushing disruptor, a guy that an extra guy that you could send on more blitzes if that's how you play, which I think suits him in the kind of in the very few glimpses that we've seen of him do that. I think that he plays that really well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily. I think Edric Cooper could play the kind of drop back guy, the kind of man in the middle, watch both sides, play side to side, kind of linebacking football. But are you always going to have a guy that's always going to bring extra pressure like that? He might be more best suited for a system that kind of leans into his blitzing abilities more rather than I think the Packers might already have that with Quay Walker. But that's just
Yeah.
me assuming and making that that he could do that.
Um, he has good coverage grades, but he has 14 receptions on 16 targets. That's not really that great. Um,
Interesting, because I saw those coverage grades too from PFF. I was like,
they were really good. He had
yeah,
272 coverage snaps, so like that's 16 throws at him and 272. A lot of that just might be like
just the
leaky running backs out of the flat.
yeah,
But part of me is like linebackers just need to be able to tackle, dude. Like
yeah,
they're like the second line of defense when it comes to big plays. If you get past the backers, you're getting probably 6-7 yards, and that's been the biggest problem for the Packers is they just haven't been able to get linebackers who are really good at tackling and being able to stuff holes as they develop. And so, if you can get a linebacker that can stuff a hole, that's good. If you can get a linebacker that can stuff a hole and actually make the tackle, that's great. And I think they're in the. I think Edgerrin Cooper's in the middle of those two
yeah.
expectations.
He might be the kind of steady guy that more longevity guy that
Yeah,
yeah he's fine, but you're not necessarily hitting higher peaks that you
right.
maybe want.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Jordan. Who is your? Do you have any more players? We have
I think
two
I have
more.
one
I have one, and
more.
you have one. Yeah.
Um, already went through Cooper DeJean, Junior Colson, Tyler Newbin, Payton Wilson. I had I think we are also going to share this guy, Max Melton.
That is our last player. Go for it.
Brother, obviously, of Bo Melton, the boy wonder. That sounds derogatory or
Yeah, don't
dismissive.
call him Boy Wonder.
I know, but he went, but he was again.
You
It's
can't
just his arc.
you can't invoke Wonder Kid from Ted Lasso. That has bad connotations.
You're caught up, aren't you?
I just started season 3, which I
Okay.
heard is not the best, but we'll get through it. Anyway, anywho's will be.
Anyway, but what I'm saying is his season arc was very just like, oh, this guy. Oh well, like just like immediate rise at the exact time that the Packers needed him to kind of make a difference. Um, so there's that. Max Melton has kind of risen in stature in part of around Packer circles just because of being a brother of Bo, but also pretty much since the combine has kind of asserted himself as maybe not a top cornerback pick uh, in this class versus the elite of the elite, but see a lot of uh, draft experts and scouts and stuff like that say if you don't invest highly in a corner in the first round, a guy like sorry, I was gonna say Bo Melton, a guy like Max Melton easily hits all the boxes that teams are gonna be looking for going into this year. Um, Beyond that, so yeah, played at Rutgers. I believe here. Let me go to my notes. Again, disruptive. He had I don't think this is from this year. I could be wrong. 8 interceptions, 22 pass breakups. I feel like that is way too much
He
for this
had
year.
yeah, he had 8 interceptions over the last 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Um, Played a lot of nickel, which interesting discussion given that the Packers obviously brought back Keyshawn Nixon. He was their starting nickel corner. Invested heavily in wanting to develop that. I don't know if that necessarily precludes him from being the next nickel cornerback or anything like that, but
PFF
has
has him as like slot would be his best spot. He,
yeah
he played a lot outside at Rutgers, but he did play some slot corner. But at 6 feet 190, he's a little he fits better as a slot corner than a outside corner.
yeah. So I think for me again, I'd probably lean more towards say if the Packers go offensive lineman, just using that example, first round, you kind of we're not talking about Quinion Mitchell, Tyrion Arnold, those guys are already off the board. Are they going to go deeper in the corners that are on the board, whether it's at 41 or I think a lot of his kind of range is around 58, probably like late second, early third. That could be kind of the sweet spot of just finding a guy that could do a little bit of everything, but obviously primarily is valued as a nickel corner.
He's currently
Um,
mocked at 59 to the Texans. So
that
the
There you go.
the second round, right after the Packers pick at 58.
I just think kind of beat this drum even more just to have kind of any versatility with their secondary, especially I know it's not his preferred position or what people think it would be his preferred position, but a guy that can kind of bring anything to the table in terms of covering outside in the slot maybe brings a little bit of special teams value too. Um, I'd be very intrigued by it regardless. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm standing with Max Melton, who's being a riser on draft boards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was commonly drafted on PFF's mock drafts like a month ago in like the late 80s, sort of like that third round pick range for the
I was gonna
Packers.
say, I think even like before the combine, it was like there was maybe some Packers. Bill Huber, he wrote like, "Oh, this it's Bo Melton's brother is gonna be in the draft
Right.
and all this stuff." It was kind of this feel good story, and now it's turning into like, well, this guy is
He's
gonna be a highly
he can
sought after
play.
day 2 pick.
Yeah. Um and I think someone asked Max Melton at the combine like what would it mean to you if you got drafted by like the Packers and played with Bo? and he just iron sharpens iron. Like that'd be like a fun thing to watch. And these guys, like these two brothers, go at it in practice, making themselves better because they've been doing it their entire lives.
Yeah.
um, NFL draft buzz is weaknesses for Max Melton. Um, his technique can be sloppy at times, uh, leading to penalties. He's prone to biting on double moves. I think that's an easier thing to learn than it is just to like it's something that can be coached up. Um, Needs to improve tackling, and his footwork can be inefficient. They said, but over the past 3 years, he has led up. This is going from 21 to 23, 24 catches, 31 catches, and 24 again on 45, 54, and 44 targets. Notably, the yards went down 394 yards on 24 receptions in 23, 332 on 31 and 22, 252 on 24 and 23, and then allowed 5, 4, 3 touchdowns in 21, 22, and 23. So clearly got better as he gained more experience. I think he's a high riser for for a prospect. I think he's just getting better and better. And at this point, it's just like how high can he rise, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can he really break out and be that sort of stud cornerback that leads a team, kind of similar to not Jair because Jair was a first round pick, but just be that kind of like that guy. Or could he just be the next really good slot corner? Like slot corner is important. There's a lot of really great wide receivers that can play slot corner, and so if he can be that, the Packers haven't had one in a while. That like think of like how um, Chris Godwin kind of beat him up last year in the Tampa Bay game. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like just smaller receivers coming out. Think of like how much Jaden Reed affects a game coming out of the slot when you have Dobbs and Watson on the outside when they're healthy. Like that's a really critical spot to have a really good receiver. And so we'll see. We'll see. All right, Jordan. That does it for our defensive draft prospects. Days 1 and 2 for the 2024 draft. Do you know who you want to draft at 25?
I don't. I don't. I could easily. I think it changes by the day. I think Graham Barton's making a good case that he could be the pick.
Yeah, he's stupid athletic. Like I think it's a home run pick of Graham Barton, Jazon Newton, and Cooper DeJean. Those are my three like home run picks. I'm fine with any three of them.
Yeah, I would agree with DeJean and Barton.
Yeah.
I might throw in a tackle, but then again, I would probably have to look more at tackles. I know I've been seeing
Well,
people
technically
keep
Barton
track
is a
of.
tackle, but sort of
Yes,
sort of
yeah, yeah.
profiles inside guard.
Um, I've been seeing people keep track of, its top 30 draft visits.
Oh yeah, draft visits and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll
We'll
see,
see.
we'll see who comes down the pipeline. And also that in itself is smoke and mirrors because I believe last year the Packers even bring in Van Ness on a visit.
I
Like
don't think they did.
I think that was something that we talked about on the live stream after the
Yeah.
fact when all these details are coming in. So
Yeah. And I
we
think
we pay attention to these
they brought in
things.
Darnell Washington, I think, and then didn't draft him. They had the opportunity to.
Yes, we pay attention to these things and kind of be like, oh, like this is where they're leaning. It's like no, it doesn't necessarily mean anything when it comes to who they're going to take first round.
Right. Nope, doesn't mean much at all. So, all
The
right, folks,
draft.
the draft exactly. Anything else, Jordan?
No, go Packers,
Go
and
Packers is right.
my mind will be keep changing back and forth to who I actually want to be
Right.
taking.
So, all right, folks, that does it for us. Thank you again for tuning in for the latest episode of Talk the Tundra. Find everything Eurostep Podcast Network at gspn.info, including the link to the Discord, which you can come in and talk about who you think you want to draft at 25 and other places um, in the draft. We have mock draft Monday, sort of informally, where everyone kind of drops their drafts in there on Mondays to get the week started off right. There's Brewers channels for all things Brewers and Bucks channels, obviously, but go check out Jason info for that link as well as links to all the other pods. Jordan and Adam just finished wrapping up 1 and 6 for a release tomorrow. I'd imagine to talk about all things Bucks, as it's my word, it's been grim lately. Um,
The podcast, I will say, it is not for the faint of heart. So if you want to talk about existential Bucks crises, we bring it to the table.
Lovely. But go check it out regardless. And then talk about it in the Discord group. And then
Exactly.
I think you and or no, Ty and Rohan did release an episode saying
Yes.
asking if they can trust the Bucks and who they can and cannot trust on the Bucks. So take that for what it's worth as well.
What
Um,
a beautiful forecast
yeah,
of a team that's about to play start a playoff run in less
less than
than
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yep.
So,
Um,
okay.
the fun team in Milwaukee, the Brewers started their season
Yeah.
last Friday. They are 4-1 after splitting a series with the Twins and sweeping the Mets over the weekend. So go check out Adam McGee and Andrew Snyder's podcast, Cruising for a Bruising, for all things Brewers. Um, it's going well. Going well. A three-gamer versus the Mariners here in Milwaukee this
Ooh.
weekend, and then I think they only have 3 games before April 26th at home after that. So uh, go check out the Brewers while you can.
Wait, what?
They play 3 against the Mariners,
Yeah.
and then they go on the road for 7, come back for 3, go on the road for 6.
Oh, the way you
Yeah,
phrased it sounded like they only played 3 games for the next like 3 weeks. I was like,
no, only 3 home games is what I meant to say. Yeah,
gotcha.
they play after the Mariners game. They play like legitimately like 16 games, and then 3 more at home. Yeah, it's gross.
I don't know if I like that.
I hate it, but the idea is, well, I should say the idea. The plus part of it is that they have,
Home heavy end of the season.
well, that and just like, you're getting away games when it's crappy out here in Milwaukee. Just hope that you can get them in when you're on the road, kind of thing. And then we get a lot more games through the summer and when it's nice out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but also check out Adam and Andrew's other podcasts. Make time for this. Um, they're sort of junk drawer pop culture pod, and I think they recorded a podcast recently. I forget. No, they have not.
They did not. I
So
don't believe
the
so.
latest one in there is just their Oscars reflections. So go check that out if you haven't already.
Oh, sorry. No, their most recent one is their top 10 of the year, unless
Yeah,
if they're not get published.
which is also the Oscar reflections.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. But that's it from us, folks. Thank you so much. Go follow us on the app formerly known as Twitter, at Numac is known, at Jordan Tresky, at Packers GSPN, where we announce all the pods when they drop and they get them right to your feeds. Subscribe to the YouTube, which is the Eurostep Podcast Network on YouTube. So we will be going live for the draft in a couple weeks on night 1. So be sure to turn the notification bell on there so you can get notifications when we plan lives and all things that way. But that's enough for the outro. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.